So let's actually get started. Let's see how much we'll have. As like I am actually a member of the steering committee, I guess I'm kind of obliged to take over the moderation of this. So can I have a note taker then?
Yeah, I'll do it
I'm
again.
not sure if there are many notes, but we'll see, I'd say. Cool. Thanks, Ozzy. So let's see. RFCs, I think, is one of the things. See. There's the RFC repository. Opening built packs, and then let me actually minimize a couple of windows before I start sharing. Too many windows, too many browser windows with too many tabs, and so just sharing. Or do I now learn that Zoom requires me to install something first and restart before I can hit share? Let's see. Zoom is requesting to bypass system private allow. Let's see. And share. I think it worked. How nice. So, well, this one is actually just a little augmentation, I think, from that one. There's following every Ubuntu LTS, Unify logs, multi-awk, Buildpacks. So I think this one is just a little augmentation that we actually plan to publish to builders from just a single repo, just as we currently
Yeah.
publish multiple base images from just a single repo. So I guess it goes a bit into the direction of you might have discussed in the last occurrence, like where we can improve what's there to make it better maintainable. So reducing the number of repos you have to attend to actually maintain a stack and a builder can help, I guess.
Mm.
Um, but anyway, that's an augmentation here to the core builder RFC that's actually already approved and merged, which was about to actually go on, starting with Noble to have a Ubuntu Noble base images repo publishing the different run images and in multi-arc, as far as I know, and to also have a builder for Noble that is publishing a multi-arc builder. The idea would be that if you want to choose your image size, so to say, you can do that by saying dash dash run image instead of you even have to pre-select which builder you use. So we basically still publish all the different sizes as run images. I think we don't publish full any longer. Was one of the decisions in here. Um, but other than
Of
that,
course, if you're using extensions, it might pick the run image for you.
hmm?
If you're using extensions, they may pick the run image for you.
Oh, you can make it as full as you want. You can install half the
No,
internet.
as in, if your builder image is using
Yeah,
extensions, the
yeah,
extensions could be doing run image switching, which
yeah,
means
yeah.
that you don't get to specify run image
Oh,
via
that you
minus
don't
minus
have
run
to do
image.
it. Yeah, okay, got it
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
Yeah, got it
because they
now.
could be toggling one in for you. Uh,
Yeah, you
I
could
don't know
even do
what
that.
happens. Yeah, it's still not clear to me in my head what happens if a user selects minus minus run image and the extension runs and picks a new run image. Which one of those wins isn't clear because minus minus run image is um, it's a platform capability provided by Pack, which isn't part of the platform spec. Like you're allowed to specify a run image, but that's a platform capability. The spec says that it's going to honor the one that came from the thing because that's the only thing that's in the spec.
I'm I'm
The
pretty sure the life cycle has this flag as well to
the
specify
life
the
cycle
image.
does,
So
but
it's not a platform thing then, right?
the
But
life cycle is spec'd as part of the platform, and it talks about how the interaction occurs between those phases, but it never addresses what happens with run image specification.
okay, whatever. It's like
Yeah,
which run
it's
image
it's one of those
wins
ones
if
that honestly the spec is weak in that area because it doesn't determine the behavior. and that's not good for the long run. So I think at some point, when I get around to it, I'll submit an RFC proposing that we at least lock that down a little bit, because the current platform spec is really just a user guide to how to use lifecycle binaries, which doesn't cover how to create a platform, which is, or what a platform's responsibilities are in a larger sense. But that's a CNCF concern, not a Paketo concern.
Yeah, yeah, and I think which
Mm.
run image will win when you have extensions is just one of the many problems with extensions that I could see.
No, I mean, to
It's
me, they
like,
make sense, right? Because we're using them in the UBI stack, and they're logical. They do make sense within that. You do get into interesting challenges if more than one extension tries to switch the run image. If there are multiple extensions that are opted into the build and are selected, but we've always looked at that as the perspective of it's down to the builder, the person who's creating the builder. It's their responsibility not to include extensions that could end up with that kind of conflict. Just as today, you really don't want to include build packs that would conflict with one another in what they're attempting, because it would be quite plausible
but
today to go and include build packs from a non-Paketo source that didn't understand what our build plan terms are, and that would try and either compile the application twice or,
Mhm.
with different flags, and you'd end up in similar boats. So once you accept the responsibility that whoever constructs the content of a builder image, who decides which build packs, which extensions are in a builder image, must apply some level of, I was going to say common sense, but that isn't quite fair. They have to apply some level of control over what they put inside the image. Otherwise, you can create something that has the risk of not working. But for anything that has been created, like the UBI stack, which has two extensions, they will never activate at the same time. So they will never end up trying to switch the run image at the same time.
I, yeah, I
Uh,
didn't intend to say that you can't make extensions work. It's just that we've
mm,
discovered more problems than solutions in them, I think I'd say. It's like there are
really?
some weird things. Yeah, it starts also with things like our build and run image actually come without package manager, and with that, bad chances to do anything in extensions, as far as I understood developers from my team.
So,
At least
so I
very
mean, an
hard to
extension isn't.
actually get
Yeah,
something in there.
yeah, an extension isn't just limited to the idea of installing system packages. That's just one of the main reasons that I wanted it, for one thing, that we needed it. But it's also, one of the more common things that people attempt to do. But that means you need a builder image that has some sort of package manager, which we created with the UBI stack in providing a UBI builder that has access to micro DNF.
Oh,
Now
but
that's
I
micro
think
DNF, not full DNF, but it still lets you install packages.
but it's not enough, right, to have it on the builder and build image because I think the extension in the end needs to run in the context of the run image. So you need a run image with a package manager.
So what we're doing is with the UBI stack, or Paketo's UBI stack, given this is the Paketo
Mhm.
call, is we've got the Paketo builder image is UBI minimal. It has no runtimes in it at all. The
Okay.
runtimes are installed via the extensions. They install either Java or Node. We've got an
Hmm.
extension for each. And then when it comes down to runtime, the run image will have switched the run image from UBI minimal to a Paketo run image for the appropriate runtime at the appropriate major revision. And as part of the UBI stack for Paketo, we're publishing Paketo run images for like Java 8, 11, 17, 23, or 21. I forget which are off the top of my head, and then various versions of Node. And we're taking all of those because Red Hat already provided runtime images for each of those runtimes for their S2I stuff. And all we're doing is saying, well, there's a run image that's got the runtime in it. We're just going to turn it into a Paketo run image or rather a build pack run image by running it through the build process so it gains the appropriate environment variables and metadata. So if you do it that way, then you have no problem because your run image automatically has what it needs to have, and that even lets you do rebasing and things like that on it. Because of course, what you've got is an application in so many layers, and then below that you've got your runtime and your OS a stack for the container from the image. If you do run image extension, which you can do, yes, your run image would need a package manager, or you'd need some way of putting those files into your run image. Um, I mean, it depends what you're trying to do
And
there. And I think the problem there is that the gate is so broad that it's very difficult to determine how to close it. If you want to install packages into your run image, you've got to have a package manager there. Or it's got to be one of those versions where you can just install a tarball straight out and unpack that as
Mhm.
root into your thing. There's 100 ways to kill that fish, but it
It
depends what you're trying to achieve.
true, true, but it's still like if you consider like let's not go too deep into that. I think we had this
Mm,
discussion last time that we met and there's no protocol, but just saying it was just Ozzy and myself, so we didn't take any
yeah,
notes. I think it's quite complicated for quite little achievements. That's what I'm arguing for. It's like even in
it
the
is.
process of talking about it, you realize that when it came back as the Docker file RFC, there was nobody left who knew the initial reasons for why this was
Yeah,
started,
yeah. There's that
say,
comes
right?
down
And
to, as I say,
you realize this when you look in how it went and what it does and how it
yeah,
works.
yeah. The Dockerfile RFC was proposed by somebody up in CNCF Buildpacks who's since left the project, but those of
Stephen
us who
Levine, I
implemented
think,
it,
was starting that
yeah,
down.
yeah, understood what was done. Of course, we're now losing Natalie from the project upstream as well,
Oh,
so
is
that's
she
going to be
leaving? Ooh,
yeah, yeah. Welcome to another Broadcom exit. So
it's not the last
um,
one. It's like,
mhm.
and it's
So that
also
means
affecting
that
Paketo.
the
So,
well, yes, because we got the replacement of Canico still outstanding upstream.
hmm hmm
With the replacement of Canico is still upstream, and we still got to consider what's happening there at CNCF Buildpacks level because Natalie would have been the logical person to have helped resolve
hmm
that. But if she, yeah, she had her last days at the end of last week, so that's not going to happen that way anymore. We're going to have to try and resolve that between the group that's still active up there.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't think extensions are a bad thing in what they achieve. Yes, I think they're overly complicated for what they were, but that's what you get when you try to wrap a framework around allowing people to execute root commands in a project that never wanted to allow people to execute root commands. Um,
Yeah, that's
and
true.
I think
So
there's always going to be a conflict there because, like I say, if you need to install system packages in your runtime and your builder, then fundamentally you have to start from that step and look forwards. You know, if that's the way that you want to do things, then you have to have a run image that has a package manager, and it's easy to achieve. We just have to add one. It means proposing a new Paketo stack that allows you to have that kind of extension.
it's like you need it in the context of how extensions work and how build packs
Hmm.
and the build pack spec is looking like and stuff like that, right? You don't need them
Yeah,
in principle. Like there are other technologies to build images that don't require you to end up with a run image, with an application image that has a package manager on it, which is like I guess
yeah.
I'd rather put a shell there than putting a
Well,
package manager
you
there, right?
don't have to leave the package manager intact in the run image in the production version of the run image. You know, it's just got to be there so that you can execute your running image extensions, right? The last command that those extensions execute could be now
Could be
uninstall the
deleting
package manager
stuff.
and clean
Yeah,
up after itself.
true,
Yeah.
true, true.
So it doesn't preclude the possibility of creating that kind of stack. It just means that the responsibility falls to the user to clean up after themselves.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right then. So what are
But
we doing with
yeah,
this proposed following every Ubuntu LTS? Well, let's get back on topic.
yeah, let's get back there. It's like I proposed that initially. I think even like Michael Dawson said, "Yeah, that looks good." And Daniel brought in some concerns with regards to will we be able to manage that because it's then every other year instead of every 4 years. And I think that was actually one of the reasons for me doing this other RFC that reduces that thing to one repo for the stacks, one repo for the builder. And I guess with that, I need to revisit this RFC. I didn't yet, but I will continue to propose that we'll just do it. It's like it shouldn't be too much work now with the reduced set of repos that you need to maintain for it. And I think in with regards to how this looks like, I try to propose that we'll actually like kind of on 1st of May 2026, we should release the version that's has just been released by Canonical. And I think it shouldn't be too difficult, especially with the potentially reduced set of build packs and packages that need to go in there. with like no full builder any longer, and the other already merged RFC, which I've created a follow-up or an implementation story now, which is about the project status. So I also, with the letting people go strategy of Broadcom, I expect that quite some of those build packs will actually end up being archived because there's no maintainers left. And then without those, it should be far easier to actually get there. I currently I can't imagine what problem the Java language ecosystem or even the Node language ecosystem should have with OS updates of that kind, right? I mean, switching from one like variant of from one distro to another might actually bring some problems, but just the updates in a single one, I don't see the problem. But I'll revisit this RFC with regards to that, but I didn't do it yet. But the idea would be that just like every LTS that Canonical releases should be supported. We can then still figure out if that's too much maintenance. We can still figure out if we want to drop older ones earlier than Canonical does. But I wouldn't go the 4-year period. But we'll see. And that's in the end, I guess, going to be a call for stack and builder maintainers, whether they take it on. I mean, the build pack maintainers need to follow up suit, right? It doesn't help to have a builder with no build packs that have ever validated whether they work nice and can be delivered with it. But so it's
Yeah.
basically something we need a consensus on in the community, whether this is worth it.
Yeah, because I mean the concern is that you'd have to validate an awful lot for each release that came out, and there's a lot of build packs out there, and I think that plays back into what we were discussing in some of the last meeting, where do we still have maintainers for all those build packs? Do we still have people who even know if they still
As
run at
I
this stage?
yeah, I can
Yeah.
let me pull up the RFC that I was referring to. I know it's not even the README is maintained properly here. About build pack status. So there's going to be tier 1, 2, and 3 build
Right.
packs. So to say tier 3 is basically there's no maintainer that we know of. We archive the repo or move it to Paketo community. Tier 2 would
Yeah.
be something where there's at least a maintainer left and they regularly release and actually do dependency updates. And from my perspective, only tier 1 build packs will be included in the builders that Paketo
Hmm.
ships. And that's the ones we need to validate for updates, I guess. And I currently believe it's going to be less than we currently have.
Oh, I think it's going to be considerably less.
Yeah. It's like I planned for Java and Node, and now that Jericho stepped up for Python, I can see that Python may be also part of that, but I don't see PHP or even Ruby with m much of interest. I don't know who else would need that. It's like haven't heard a lot about it
I
in the
like the
recent past.
clarity that's offered in the one that you're showing on screen at the moment. I like the clarity that's offered there about actually meeting certain thresholds to be counted. Obviously, you're just saying about Jericho, but Jericho would only count as a tier 2 at that point unless he's got somebody else that would be
Oh yeah,
looking at it.
true. One maintainer is not
Yeah.
enough. That's true.
So
That's true. That's true.
Jericho needs to bring a friend to the party so that we can include the build packs in the builder images.
I
I
mean,
think, yeah, we'd be okay for Java. We're going to be okay for Node because I know that there's at least two Node maintainers that I talk with regularly at Red Hat. I count, well, I'm not an official Java maintainer, but I would count as one for the purpose of making sure that we've got people working on stuff. I know Daniel's working on Java as well. So that's Java and Node at tier 1. I wonder about having the same sort of concept for the stacks as well, though. Does you know what I mean? So that like if you like looking back at your previous one that we were just looking at for proposing following every Ubuntu
mhm.
LTS, that you would need to be able to demonstrate that you've got two maintainers that are willing to look after each of the stacks that are generated as a result of that. And providing you have, then I think that hits the same threshold. You know, if we set it as sort of a Paketo wide thing to say that a tier
Yeah,
1 stack is one where there's at least two people looking after it. Um, Tier 2 stacks is there's just one person looking after it. Treat it as
yeah,
experimental, and anything below that is it's been abandoned. Here there be
yeah.
dragons. So
Yeah. Sounds reasonable. And for what
Yeah,
it's worth, I think my concern is mainly is not like I think it's fair to actually present this both to the community and to users, right? What they can expect. I mean, a single maintainer, when they drop because whatever, change
yeah,
of job or whatever, it can be very quick, right? That there is no maintainer left. Um,
yes,
on the other hand side, for topics like should this be included in a builder that is shipped by the community, I'd rather look at the availability for cross-project work like where it would be blocking, right? Like new builders, new Ubuntu versions that need to be adopted, or multi-arch or something like that, right? I wouldn't include build packs that don't show the availability for this kind of cross-project work because that can then actually be a burden for delivering the others, right? So I wouldn't necessarily fix that on the tier of the build pack. Not necessarily, at least, whether I would include it or not. But in theory, yeah, actually, it would be best if we said it's like a tier one builder just provides tier one build packs is also a
yeah,
clearer message for the users, right? If you choose to
yeah,
use
yeah,
Paketo Builder, then you have a supported offering in
yeah. I mean,
terms of
that's the
there's two
question that I think
maintainers, and
everybody's
even if
after.
one
Is
leaves, right, there's still
yeah,
some life in the.
that's the question that everybody's after at this point. Is really knowing that if you're using a Paketo builder at the moment to build your project, are there actually people still working on the stuff that you just ran? And we
Mhm.
can't say that at the moment because we don't know which build packs ran and we don't know which build packs are currently still have developers looking after them. With the
Yeah,
advent of the proposal there, yes, we would know which one's a tier one. We could say that as of this point, if you're running a tier one builder, if you want to think of it that way, that yes, you're covered. Tier two
uh-huh.
builders, following Asimov's laws of robotics, will include tier one builders, build packs by default. They don't mind. So a tier two builder can now optionally include tier two build packs, and a tier three builder can only be published from Paketo community and should not be a Paketo build packs builder. That's the follow
Yeah,
out from there, though.
yeah,
That if you
yeah,
want to have a builder image that pre-packages tier three build packs, it will not be a Paketo build
yeah,
packs builder. It will be a
yeah,
Paketo
definitely.
community builder. And it comes with it. That comes with all the levels of support that is associated with it being a community project, then.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I
So
think that
yeah,
fits.
so this is kind of my
Mhm.
first step now into implementing that RFC, right? It's not much yet. It's a list of basically the teams, so to say, but I'll reach out to them individually or make sure that the steering committee does to clarify where about like availability of maintainers and willingness to participate. And then we need to decide on those what they are, which tier they are, and even for tooling, we should have a very close look, I guess. Like we did already some experiments, like with the upcoming Lippack V2, is at least not too hard to implement, to re-implement or repurpose built packs built with Packet, and actually use Lippack for it, which is one of the things we are looking into because there's no Packet maintainer left. Like, I mean, there's tooling maintainers, and like two colleagues from my team just stepped up, but they will rather migrate things to Libpack than starting or continuing to maintain two different variants of Go package for authoring
Yeah.
build.
Which one's the Java subsystem using off the top of my
Libpack
head?
is the one that it's even like that's another proposal I will have to make,
Yeah.
and let's see what Daniel and the others say to it because it's even under the hood of Java maintainers as a team. But I would move that over to tooling maintainers. And then GitHub config and pipeline builder is a similar situation. That's the two different CI systems for either the Java or well, it's Java and utilities and APM versus the
Mhm.
rest, I think.
Yes,
Um,
it is. Well, it's Java and the whole Java ecosystem. So anything that was related to that ended up on the Java way of doing things. And I forget which way around it is, but I think the thing was called Octo, the tool that's used for building Java stuff. That's what I'm just noticing because you haven't got Octo listed on tooling there. So give
I
me a
didn't
second to go
even
find
know
it.
that. It's like I know that Libpack once had a command line in it, and that's moved to Libpack tools. I didn't know that there's even another one. That maybe I'm missing something. That's possible.
Yeah, give me a second. I'll go find it.
Yeah.
Um,
And then I guess when this is through, we'll have a clearer picture on uh, what teams we can rely upon, which infrastructure we can rely upon, and these kind of things. I hope that actually helps keeping the project alive, despite so many people leaving.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
even
it's a risk in it when you've got a single vendor so heavily involved and then that vendor decides to lose all of its employees. So we've still got
Mhm.
enough of us. I mean, look at us here today. We're not representative of the group that was running things. So we can have to figure out which way things head from here.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure that
Yeah.
there are users out there who maybe somebody configured it, it's running and building apps, and maybe they left and now it's just kind of like a ship that's sailing itself, and we're just not aware of it. Um, and on the topic of like different statuses, different tiers for different build packs, like you didn't mention Go, but the Go build pack, like that's one of those situations where you don't need the base images to have anything. There's no dependencies anywhere. So, and the way you build Go apps doesn't really change that much. So I think it's very likely that we don't need a ton of maintainers just to keep that going, but that's just my opinion.
Hmm.
Because it might be the case as well. We might want to consider mature build packs that are relatively stable like that should be okay to still be a tier one build pack if they have only one maintainer in that way, providing they're in a pool of build packs where other people are willing to take them on. I'm trying to justify here that like build packs, you need a lot more effort to develop it and get it up and running than you do to look after it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, I agree with you. On the other hand, that having two maintainers makes sense because it avoids the issue of what happens when one maintainer gets hit by a bus in traditional software engineering
I,
parlance.
I think my strategy would rather be to treat both tier one and tier two as relatively solid offerings
Hmm.
and contrast them to tier three, then compromise on the rules, I guess. It's like maybe it's okay to
Yeah.
use the tier two build pack. It really means, potentially
Hmm.
at least, that it just doesn't need so much care. And I mean,
Yeah.
the degree of automation is pretty high, right? With regards to
Yeah.
dependency updates and other things. So I agree that not everything, like build packs, especially some of the niche build packs, like in the utilities, right? Adding environment variables, are a prime candidate of, if software is ever done, then those are candidates for actually applying to this status, right? To be done. Like there's basically not really anything left to do but maybe dependency maintenance. And that might also be true for Go. Um, like that was probably not true while they were still figuring out their module system, right? Go mod vendor and all these kind of stuff, right? That you also see in the Go build pack. But now I guess they won't change it, right? So maybe that doesn't need like I also wouldn't expect to broadly breaking changes in the Go ecosystem that would need a lot of attention. That's true. Um, Anyway, we'll see, and we can also adjust depending on what we see, right? And as I said, if there is at least a maintainer left, right, that really says, yes, I'm there, and I can occasionally work on some cross-project topics like multi-arch or new operating system versions or these kind of things. I don't see too many of these projects coming up, right? Multi-arch is one of the really big ones. But it was also kind of blocked, right, by lack of maintenance. It's like it could long be there, say. But yeah, I'm looking forward to see how this turns out with the project status. I very much hope that it helps to also organize the project and actually realize how many of us are left and what can we actually achieve, right? All right. Was that? Maybe this is going to be getting obsolete when we really look into um
Yes. If you
phasing down
start simplifying
Packet,
the
and
libraries,
it's
that'll
just
collapse down on itself.
yeah. So maybe that really just going to collapse. I don't think that Rolf had a look at that in the meantime. So maybe it's also not worth looking closely now. And this is even just a draft. I wasn't aware of that. I mean, the
Let
work
me
is
comment.
ongoing and in corners already done, isn't it?
Yeah, the problem is that this thing was drafted before any work was done in CNB. And then I stopped kind of engaging with Paketo and started engaging with upstream to help that happen. So anyways, um, I I can see that we're building some stuff with Java. And I actually started doing some research to compare what the CNB documentation spec examples show are the ways that you're supposed to use this new system. I'm not sure that we're doing it the way that they're suggesting it. So what I'm trying to do is reconcile that we should be building a certain way. And once we have all that reconciled, I will propose what we need to do, because like a lot of the build packs that I'm familiar with use Jam to build. But the Java ones I think use libpack. So anyways, we just need to have a unified approach here. Like one thing is that right now we're putting things in package toml, and it's possible that we might only need to be putting it in buildpack toml, like the targets. So
Okay.
because the CMB spec documentation RFC, I'm pretty sure just says to put it in buildpack toml. So I'm gonna move this forward.
Yeah.
It's been
I,
sleeping on it for quite a while, but I'm paying attention to it now.
yeah. I'd be inclined to look closer to Litpack and that kind of tooling because I'd say the gem parts of publishing build packs is also very much related to Packet as it's not really tied to each other, right? One is just how you can package it and deliver it, and the other is about the library you use to write the build pack or author the build pack. But these are actually two sub-communities, or were two sub-communities within the Paketo ecosystem. And
So I did.
I tend to look to Litpack for most of the stuff. What we did also before, like prior to having a Litpack v2, we already provided an implementation of this other RFC that was there to have new dependency metadata that is better suited to actually do multi-arg than libpack currently does. I think currently they use a query parameter of the Perl to distinguish the architecture of the dependency they download, but there is no proper metadata about that possible in the buildpack toml, and I think that's not available yet in Packet.
Yeah, that's a part. That's a good point that I haven't. So I noticed that the Java build packs use a certain format, like you said, the query parameter. Um, that's why I haven't moved this forward, because I'm just not sure what do. I think the dependencies are open to interpretation. I'm not sure that the spec says anything specific in there about how you should be doing dependencies metadata.
The CNCF spec
The
doesn't, but the
CNCF spec
libraries that
doesn't,
interpret it
but
from no, the
what
libraries that Paketo uses does.
Right.
Paketo has actually um, an approved RFC for standard dependency metadata format. So here you see that's like what Paketo has defined for itself.
Does it include architecture?
It does include architecture. No, that's well, it
Okay.
does. Yep.
So then if libpack already implements that, so I will look at libpack.
It's potentially only on the main branch, which is V2, which is pending, but I think that's just like just reach out to Daniel. Then we are the two of us. It's nothing left to be done. It's just releasing it, I think, or maybe testing it. But there shouldn't
I
be
mean,
any work left for
libpack v2 is
releasing
already in
libpack v2.
use. Yeah, libpack
In
v2 is in
use?
use. We're using it in the UBI stack
You
for
use
that
it
stuff.
already? It's not
I,
released
I
yet.
wrote So I wrote most of the code for the
Okay.
V2 version of Libpack and libjvm and Pipeline Builder Stool Pigeon,
Okay.
libcnb. Yeah, I wrote an awful lot of those bits because when extensions were added to the CNCF spec upstream, none of those libraries had it. We needed
Mhm.
it for UBI. I couldn't even publish a stack until we had that. So that's what we've done. We put it through that. There's some very interesting capabilities welded through all of those libraries that I've just mentioned that allow them to use versions of each other that are referenced by Git commits because Go's versioning was so awful at times that there was no way to get it to use the correct version unless you knew the Git commit, which you didn't know until you had committed the thing, which made testing it an absolute nightmare.
I can believe that. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's not officially released, but it should be at the brink of being released. So maybe you just also reach out to Daniel, and that gives him one reason more to look into it and actually get it released.
Yeah.
I
But
think
if you have a
there's
look at the
officially
UBI
no issue left
stats,
that's tagged for it needs to be implemented before we can go out.
yeah. But if you look at how the UBI Java extension is written, that's using V2 already.
Okay.
Has been for a while. I've just pasted a whole load of stuff into the chat of this, which you might find handy for that other doc that was going on. These were my internal notes that I've kept on the various different
Mhm.
repositories and what they were there for along the way. So Octo is indeed Pipeline Builder that we were talking about earlier.
Oh, it's the repo is called Pipeline Builder, but the project name is
The
Octo
tool
or what?
itself is called, yeah, the tool is called Octo. The tool that
Okay.
actually does the generation of the configuration from the uh, Octo specific config file. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you imagine there's a YAML file that describes the project, that is in Octo format. And if you want to think of it that way, Octo reads that and spits out the rest of the GitHub pipelines as part of the project pipeline builder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, what
And yes,
whatever that's
libpack, libjvm, pipeline builder,
hmm
they're all part of the Java side of the ecosystem. libcnb is official CNCF upstream
hmm
stuff that is only used by libpack. And I think Jam and Packet just ignored that and came up with their own version, ignoring what libcnb did. So they're not even using the upstream CNB Go library, which is a bit iffy. So we had to patch extension support into Jam and into
hmm
um, Packet later on as well. What
Yeah.
else we got going on there? So Pipeline Builder Canary and Pipeline Builder Stool Pigeon are two projects which exist in Paketo, official projects, which are there to validate that Pipeline Builder um, creates the right type of pipelines for projects that have build packs and projects that have extensions.
hmm
The idea being that their test script runs whenever we update Pipeline Builder and will fail if it doesn't generate a project that's actually capable of building itself.
Okay. I think
Hence
a lot of what
it's
you're
the
talking
canary in
about
the coal mine.
sounds more complicated than it needed to be.
Well, the problem with some of this stuff is that it's a Go library in a repository in GitHub. And the way that Go structures itself is that a repository maps to a given entity in the Go package space. You know what I mean? So if you want to be able to test that, you can't easily do that from within that project if the project is the thing being released.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where you have to have a separate project, which is originally was Canary. And Canary's
hmm
job was to sit there and take the latest version of Pipeline Builder and try and generate pipelines for itself using it. Of course, that was great, but that works for driving all of the build pack paths through Pipeline Builder. And I just added a whole load of paths for extensions, which,
hmm
although very similar, are not exactly the same. So we had to have a second project that did that as well. So it sounds like it's complicated, but once you understand the reasons and the fact that Canary and Stool Pigeon basically do nothing, they're empty projects that are just there so that when they stop compiling, we know there's a problem. That's
hmm
their whole purpose in life. They're essentially just in a regression test suite against released versions of Pipeline Builder. Yeah, libpack, libjvm, libcnb, a lot of interesting stuff in there. And as with all of them, they all currently have two versions. They've all
hmm
got the version 1.x and a version 2.x. Now, sometimes main is the version 2. Sometimes version 2 is in a release branch called release 2.x. Um, Go's versioning was a nightmare because apparently when you first release a Go module, you don't have to put a version within the path of your module. And if you try and add that in later, then that has implications on all of the code that was already trying to use it without a version. So
Mhm.
we couldn't work around that across every build pack that consumed it because the change would have been huge. So we did what we could at the time between myself and Daniel to come up with an approach that worked. So when we simplify this stuff, that will be far up on the list of things that we should hit with a very big hammer until all of the ice chips off of the edge, revealing the idea at the middle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Jam and Packet, you're right. That's the non-Java ecosystem side of it. The fun thing that's worth mentioning is Pipeline Builder, in theory, is capable of building the pipelines for building builder images and run images, as well as Buildpack
Mhm.
and extension and meta Buildpack projects. It's never been tested as in any official way for doing that within. It's never been used for doing that within Paketo. All the code is sitting in there to make it do it. It's because it was designed to be. Pipeline Builder was designed to be the replacement tool that would wipe lib, yeah, wipe lib, whatever it is, packet and jam would go away, and Pipeline Builder would step in. It copes in
Mhm.
scenarios where jam and packet will not cope. I know that much. However, that's never happened because there were too many people advocating for keeping one versus keeping the other historically. Um,
Yeah, that's just a historical mess, I
yeah,
think.
there's a
Um,
few in there that are kind of weird that's worth knowing about. As I say, Paketo Buildpack's lib dependency handles all the dependency management stuff that Jericho was just talking about, and you were just showing there with the that's the library that manages that in a consistent way across each of those. Then there's Occam, which is the library for integration tests, which is, if you need to know more about that, find Costas or Michael and ask them. They know a lot about that at the moment because they had to learn all of that lot to get the UBI node stack to have proper integration suite testing going on within Paketo.
yeah.
I think that's all of the ones that I've met. I mean, there's thing is when you look at the Paketo build packs organization within GitHub, there are a lot of repositories underneath
Yeah.
it. Some of those are build packs, some of those are
Yeah.
extensions, some of those are stacks, and the
Yeah.
rest of them are just things.
Yeah.
Some of those are important things,
Yeah.
some of them aren't.
Yeah.
There's no way of knowing which is which until you start following the dependency graph from something you care about. And then you start mapping. That's what I've done with that. And that's what we've had to do within Red Hat as we've tried to learn how this space worked
Yeah.
and what we needed to do to play within it.
And yeah, I think
So,
some spring cleanup could be a good thing in that org.
oh, I don't know if we can use that word in this chat, can we?
Probably not, but
A bit of spring clean. No, spring cleaning. No, that can't use that either. No.
whatever. So I think there's quite some things to do in that direction. I don't even quite get why you need a project that is capable of building pipelines because like they are pretty static, right? For what we do, we have a pipeline description for how we build build packs, and all our build pack repos use that very same thing. Same is true for builder and stacks, and they are pretty much static. There's no need to generate them. Or for take the GitHub config stuff that moves around GitHub workflows. I mean, GitHub can allows you to reuse workflows that are defined in a central place. There's no need to copy them around. These
Yeah,
kind
and then
of
I suspect that's something that just never happened in Paketo to put them in a central place. But what's going on at the moment is that it's a lot easier to have one very small metadata file that you look after than essentially a bunch load of GitHub actions, which are very long and need to be 100% accurate, otherwise things stop working. And rather than cutting and pasting the actions from project to project, they've taken the approach of we'll take the important metadata that's needed, and then we'll run a tool that will generate those GitHub action flows from that metadata. One of the things that tool is capable of doing is updating those actions in future to newer versions of those actions, should the tool itself get an update to teach it new tricks. And that's why we have projects that check that pipelines can build, because we need to know something before we release the new version of Pipeline Builder that will automatically cause all of the build packs to update their pipelines. You want to know that a pipeline generated by this thing isn't going to kill the project. So that's what's going on there. It's just one more layer of testing to try and prevent us shooting ourselves in both feet. I don't think we could get away with just having GitHub actions, though. And I mean, I know you say that we don't change them very often. The big problem is when we do change them, we need to change them all.
But as I said, you can reuse them. You don't have to change them in many places. You can
Yeah.
change them in one place. You can say,
So there might
here's the workflow for building build packs. And
so there
once
might be
they
an
all
argument
use the
against.
same library and tooling for releasing
Yeah.
them, that's going to be one workflow that's working everywhere. And you don't
Yeah, but
have to
that's
actually distribute it. I guess I might be wrong, but that's also definitely an angle I would at least look
yeah.
for staying to commit to a tool that generates the pipeline because it
Yeah,
should
I mean, nothing's doing
immediately.
that at the moment. We don't have a common workflow
Yeah,
repository in
yeah, it's
Paketo.
true.
Jam, ironically, Jam actually has one, but it uses
Mm.
it to copy the workflows from before it edits them to make them look like
Yeah,
they need to be for a given project. But yes, if there was a common thing, I don't know that we've got that set up anywhere. So, if that's a proposal, that probably needs to be in its own RFC as part of the what do we do when we try to navigate away from having two different build systems. The
yeah,
answer is introduce a third and move to that.
yeah. I mean, looking at that, there's also another thing. I think I published that to Slack, Core Def, I think. So you might have already seen it. So we personally have pretty good experience with Renovate to manage dependencies, and are currently proposing that this might be an alternative to having all kinds of self-written workflows and Dependabot, because I think it looks pretty neat actually. Like you can group updates, and you actually get to see the release notes of upstream when you check whether something is good or not. So if you're interested, you can have a look into that. I think, as I said, Core Def or General were the channels where I proposed that everyone should look into that and say something. I think Michael Dawson already said that he doesn't care much, asking for how much it would cost in terms of implementing that everywhere. I personally like it, and also the flexibility you have with it. Um, and I think for the Java meta build pack, you can then actually kick out 26 workflows because all the build pack dependency updates are individual workflows. So for
Mm.
all the different JVM vendor build packs and stuff like that. So I think this also
Yeah, yeah. Well, when they're
uh,
merged, I
some
mean,
some
today I think they're
cleanup
all in their
some
own
cleanup
separate.
stuff in a sense. And I think Renovate is
Hmm.
pretty neat. We actually even manage Ubuntu package versions with it. So we have an explicit list that has pinned versions, and there is a Renovate integration that gives you update information about Ubuntu packages.
Let me ask a
Yeah.
question.
Sure.
The using Renovate, are we talking about for bumping dependencies in go.mod files, or are we talking about bumping dependencies and versions in buildback toml files?
Both.
Okay, and somebody's doing it with Renovate today in buildback
We
toml?
we do that with Renovate today in
Okay,
private repos, of course. So we use that, and it's like, yeah, that one is, you can see it here. That's with a regex matcher, basically,
can
right? That
you
it,
share that link? I mean, yeah, I was gonna
I can,
say, yeah, go ahead.
sure. It's like, as I said, on Paketo Slack, you'll find the link as well, but I can also
Oh,
put
it's already there. Okay, I'm sorry.
it
I'll
should
go
be
take a look.
there. Yeah, yeah, it should be. Well, this, yeah, I think I even have a reference to the configuration file. There's definitely one to the repo, and it's just in the root of the repo. And it wouldn't need to be there, so there are means to actually say, like, there are presets or other things. So that's also like a source file that will not need to be copied over and maintained in multiple repos. You can actually do the configuration in a central place.
Isn't a regex based version? I'm gonna have to drop in a few minutes, but let me just kind of say this before I go. Isn't a regex based approach not as good as doing something like you read a TOML file into a data type and then you're processing it that way? I feel like somebody somehow doesn't create the file in the exact same regex format.
Yeah. So it's like for this one, like there is nothing in Renovate that can help you, right?
Yeah.
Um, and would understand the Buildpack TOML files, and I'm not sure if it's worth it. Like our experience with the Renovate community is so-so. So what we did actually integrate is a Buildpack support. So if you're a Buildpack user, you now have things. I think it's a PR in flight that you can even have it if you use the Maven integration, the Spring image thingy. in a POM XML. So even for that, you'll get now updates from us. That was contributions from us to Renovate. So Renovate now understands what Buildpacks are, what a Buildpack registry is. So it also understands the URN something notation for referencing those, and can actually give you updates for those. I would currently not recommend to go the whole way of providing such a Buildpack TOML file support in Renovate, because it'll take a while to get that in. That's our experience. And it's really just Paketo using it, right? Like there's not really a huge audience that would benefit from it. I think Renovate will take it. They even have support for Carvel Vendia, so something really special, right? So they seem to be open to take in different dependency file versions and stuff like that. But it was quite involved to get them to review and merge the PRs. It took much longer than we thought initially. So
Okay.
but one could look into it, right? I mean, that this is a regex thing is because that's the last resort, so to say, right? For file formats that are not natively supported by Renovate. And the Buildpack TOML is one. But I bet they would take a contribution that supports them natively. And then you're right, then you would have a little bit of code that really knows what it's doing.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I like Jam. Still, I like the Paketo tooling for all of this stuff. I wouldn't switch to using Renovate.
Okay.
Okay, cool. I have to drop, but a great discussion as always. And I will be making some progress on the multi-arch stuff, probably later this week or next week, realistically. But I'm going to take that RFC PR out of draft state, and we will get people to comment on it after I make some updates.
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. All right, guys. Take care.
All
Good to
right.
see you.
Thanks a lot.
Yep.
So I guess we'll then best just really close the call with only us two left. Otherwise, we'll sitting here until you have a meeting, because or some of my children is calling for me because I'm no longer working. So let's see.
I was just watching your screen there because it was kind of curious that I know what I'd entered into that document and it wasn't there yet, and it suddenly updated and added it all.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, now it's quite a lot. Yeah, that's true. Whatever.
Yeah, no,
Whatever.
I think I covered most of it. I think though, just as a sidebar between the two of us, rather, I think the official part of it's done as far as we're concerned for the meeting. But yeah, I think if we're bringing down the number of projects in Paketo overall, then yes, that means that Packet and Jam and Pipeline Builder will all collapse. I don't think that means that we can't introduce another concept, as you say, by having common workflows if we can set that up and make it work, that would definitely do something to reduce the amount of maintenance that we've got. You could even have Pipeline Builder look after those common workflows so that it's easier and less problematic to update them. Because you don't want somebody really editing them by hand unless there's a way to seriously drive those with test cases. Because if they are truly common in GitHub, they will break everything instantly if they get broken, and that would be a bad thing, DM. I'm game to lend a hand with you as you put that stuff together if you're the one who wants to do that. So I don't have the time to lead that. My time for working on Buildpack is now down to roughly about half a day to a day a week. That's all I can spare at the moment. So I can't do much more than that on it. But I do know how Pipeline Builder works, why it did that, as does Daniel, obviously. And I do have a fair decent bit of experience with GitHub Actions flowing things through, and the entire build system for Paketo, because I had to learn all of that lot as we were trying to figure out how it's working. So if you want a hand with any of that lot or understanding bits and pieces, then by all means give us a shout, because it's fun to work through that stuff together and challenge whether or not I do know what I'm talking about. I probably won't. We'll figure it out when we get there.
Yeah,
Right?
it's true.
That's all the fun.
Yeah. I can't say yet how deep we'll look or where we'll look. It also depends sometimes on what other things we have to do. But I indeed have the luxury of maintaining the backlog for a team, right? So I'm not talking about one day a week, but I'm talking about a couple of people who work full time, and I give the priorities. So that's the
Yeah,
difference.
exactly. I mean, so Michael and Costa have a bit more time to work on stuff as well. So I'm sure that once the cards start to fall, it becomes easier to get involved and decide which bits need to be done and where. But it's that early prototyping stuff where all the fun happens. Yeah, give me a shout if you're doing it. I'd love to
Yeah,
at
definitely.
least
I
keep an
think
eye on what's
yeah.
going on.
First step will probably be about Libpack versus Packet, or well, actually,
Yeah,
so
but it's
to
probably
just
pipeline
really
builder
get
versus
to that,
packet.
there should be
Yeah,
one of these libraries,
yeah,
not two. There should have never
yeah.
been a second one.
I agree. I agree. But that was the situation when I arrived. So I'm not going to
Yeah,
make
yeah, sure.
any
Same
challenges
for
as to
same
how it
for
arrived at that way. I've been on commercial projects that have been worse. So
true.
could be
Also
fun.
true. Also true.
This
Yeah.
is one of my more recent workflows. I'll just link through the chat as well, um, which has a big matrix up top. I know I could kind of generate that, but there were valid reasons why I didn't want to at the time. And this is one that basically runs a bunch load of tests on using like Ubuntu and Mac and different versions of Podman, different versions of Docker, or different, well, depending on which. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
a running against Windows, Mac, and Ubuntu with a container runtime of Podman 4, Podman 5, or Docker, with Podman being in either rootful or rootless in either version, running with either Java 17 or Java 21, building a project that is built with Spring or Quarkus. To make sure that it's capable of doing it, and yeah, that's the most fun GitHub action that I've written in a long while that just basically zips through and makes all
Mhm.
that work and means that when I now release the new versions of my Java platform, I know it's been tested across like 34 different variants of platforms and various other things, which makes me a lot happier because
Yeah,
we were
I can
hitting
believe
things
that.
like,
Definitely.
you can hit edge cases where Podman 4 does things slightly different with volume mount permissions than Docker or Podman 5 does. In general, the newer versions of Podman, the newer the version of Podman, the closer it is to Docker's behavior. That's my rule of thumb.
Hmm.
Um, but when you're looking at rootless for Podman, where it all runs without needing without actually mapping root locally, and you can run it all as a user daemon. Um, yeah, there are some interesting edge cases, especially with volume mounts regarding what files end up with which permissions locally versus from the in container view.
Yeah, I
Because
recall that we had similar topics last
yeah,
time we spent the
yeah,
hour. There are, yeah, the devil.
yeah.
We know that.
Devil's in the details on these. So everything looks great from a high level until you start actually using it, and then you
Mhm.
discover, well, you don't really. It's only after you've been spending 6 hours writing it, assuming everything was going to work, do you then discover the reason why it wouldn't. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
it's
And why it
it's
would,
it's worth it.
why it was clear from the beginning that it wouldn't work. Yeah.
But you realize that in hindsight, never
Mhm.
when you're reading it the first time
Sure, but
around.
in hindsight, it's clear from the beginning. You could have known
Yes.
that.
Yeah, yeah, and I've
Anyway.
written projects. I've worked now quite closely with the container team, the Podman guys as well.
Mhm.
So when I hit the most recent one, the I think it's 5.4.1 or one of those versions of Podman could actually deadlock if you tried to do something with it. And when I pinged them to say, "Hey, I'm just asking, do you know it's doing this?" and they said, "Yeah, here's the defect. Guess you've hit it then." I'm like, yep. But it's like, if I'd had that test suite up and running, I'd have known the day they released the new version of Podman, and that's more I'm trying to aim towards. I think it's a different world now with GitHub Actions being able to run so much. Yeah. It's possible to delegate almost all of your test suite, almost all of your build and infrastructure just to a free instance of a VM that you've never met, which is
Mhm.
um, I hate to think how much compute power I'm using just to validate that my Snowdrop library runs on all those different versions, and yet it kicks off on a regular basis, and GitHub's fine with that. I hope they'll always be fine with that. So, all right.
Yeah, that's true.
Until next time, then, I guess. And
Until
if you
next
get on
time.
with some of this stuff in the meantime, good luck.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
No
Bye.
worries.
See you.
Take care. See ya.